Hey guys, we are on training number 2. So I want to help you to understand that when you have that metaphysical anxiety, it's not something that you have to push down, but you can take that energy and distribute it. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. But first we have to do some prep work. So the number one thing that I want you to do is to get a pen and a paper and make a list. Don't just do it on your phone, actually write it out. Because I want you to make a list of 10 to 20 items that you enjoy doing on a daily basis. So for instance, one of those things could be looking out the window and enjoying the beautiful landscape. Or it could be that you like to get into that inner child space and look at old programs from whenever you were a child. You know, when I think about shows from the 60s and 70s, I think of I Dream of Jeannie and the Munsters and Leave It to Beaver and like those kind of shows. So I might think of those types of shows and write that down on my list. Now, the idea isn't that I want you to do something so simplistic as, well, when you're in anxiety, just do something you like. It's not that elementary, okay? You're not going to get a quick fix from just simply doing something you enjoy because you're in anxiety. So in that moment, though, in the prep work, I want you to make a list of 10 to 20 items that you really like. So I'm going to read a few that might resonate with you. So number 1, just breathe. Breathing is just taking some deep inhale and exhales. That's something. Yoga, just getting some, it doesn't have to be a whole yoga class. It has to be something that's accessible to you on a day-to-day basis. So meaning, yeah, you might like to go to yoga class, but on a day-to-day basis, if you were in your home right now or in your office or on an elevator, what could you start to institute in that moment from that list just to disrupt the negative thinking and the anxiety thinking and the fearful thinking? What can you do to disrupt? So I want you to think of friction. I want you to think of something really positive and really accessible that anxiety just can't compete with, okay? So it does not mean, again, that you're going to negate the anxiety just because you're doing this fun thing, okay? It's not frivolous, it's not elementary. You're going to understand why and how I'm getting into that in a minute. But number 1, that list has to be 10 to 20 items that are easily accessible. So going to yoga, actually physically going to a yoga class is great, and it's stress reduction, and it's teaching you, and it's a hobby, and it's all of those things. But you know what? At 9 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, you can't go to yoga class, right? So if you can't go to yoga class at 1 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock at night, then you can't put that on your list. You have to only put on your list what you can do. So maybe what you can do is you can actually get up and do some yoga. You know, you could practice yoga. You can, if you're at your office, you could do a couple of stretches. If you're on an elevator, you could practice deep breathing or just stretch your arms. What can you do that is very accessible every single day? And some of them will be more accessible than others, but what can you do? What can you incorporate on this list? So you might want to stop the training video and go ahead and make that list up. You can definitely email me too, and if you're in our membership group, you can connect there and ask people's advice of what they put on their list, or you can ask me. You could do that as well. But right now, I want you to get that list going. Now, sometimes what people do on their list is they'll say, call one of my friends, which technically is okay. Another item would be hug my children, talk to my husband. You know, these are things that people will often put on their list. But I don't want you to put those on the list because I don't want this to be dependent upon somebody else, okay? This is about you becoming more empowered. So if you have something else happening that you need your husband or you need to hug your children or you need to call a friend, it becomes about you're anxious if you don't have that external stimulation and that support system. Now, I do want you to have a support system. So I do want you to, if you have a therapist, connect with your therapist and let your therapist know about this, or your doctor. If you're in our membership group, The Nest, you know you always have access to me, a therapist that you could always talk to, and you could always leave messages and get input from other people as well. So you will have that support as well. However, on your day-to-day, if you're not in The Nest and you don't have access 24/7 to someone that is always there available for you, you really can't put them on that list, okay? So definitely make your list 10 to 20 items of what you can do instead of having that anxiety. Now let's get into what we're going to do with that list, okay? I want you to get the idea of that list and put it to the side. And if you haven't started the list or you haven't finished it, you can just keep going with this. You could stop the seminar, like I said, or the training, or you can go ahead and just keep going and move back to that. So number one, we have the list. Number two, we have to have awareness. Many times we really don't have awareness into what causes our anxiety. We just think we're an anxious person and we just feel that we're a worrywart, or maybe we know what caused our anxiety, but we can't seem to shake it. Or we're only looking at the topical of what caused our anxiety and we think that's the only thing, but really there's something else that we don't even know about that's underneath of it. Doesn't really matter though, okay? What I want you to think about is more the feelings. So if you ask a child or a teenager, what happens to you before you get anxious? They usually can give you very detailed, at first they might say, I don't know, but if you ask them a few questions, they get to this really detailed place. You know, a 7-year-old might say, well, before I get angry, my feet tingle, and then my neck I feel tight up in my shoulders and neck, and I want to clench my hands, and then I get mad. That is how in touch we are when we don't have all these blocks. So think about maybe your inner child self. What were the feelings that you had as a child that you can recall when you were alone, or what types of things made you fearful? Was it just being in the dark? Was it a feeling of isolation? Was it somebody was angry? Was it that you didn't like to hear fighting? What types of things triggered you as a child? Also look into the here and now. How in touch are you with, okay, before I get anxious, here's the thoughts that I'm thinking. Okay, so for instance, people that are afraid of driving, right? They just feel uncomfortable with driving. They might feel like, well, when I know I have to go somewhere, I start to think about all the things that could go wrong when I'm driving. I start to think about, what if I get lost? What if I run out of gas? You know, they start to think of all of these things. Well, that is the actual, not quite underlying fear, but that's a level down. So it's not really they're anxious driving. They're starting to get anxious before they even get in the vehicle, okay? So you want to write down your list of awareness of the things that trigger you and the feelings and the thoughts that you get before you get triggered. And here's what you're going to do. That list is going to be maybe 5 to 10 to 15, even 20 items, whatever the triggers are for you that you notice. So if your relationship is a place of stress, write relationship-based items down. Now, when you have all of that, I want you to get to, okay, now I have all of this, and I have all of this awareness. Now I have the disruptors of things that I enjoy. So the next time I know I have to go somewhere and I feel really stressed out about thinking about driving somewhere, I'm going to look on this list and like notice, oh wait, I like nature and I love scenery. Okay, so I'm going to focus on scenery as I'm driving. So you're bringing a disruptor into the awareness. Now, this is just elementary right now. This isn't the big picture and it's a process, but as you get used to putting disruptors into the awareness space, you're going to start to feel that you're minimizing the anxiety, okay? And it's true, you will be minimizing the anxiety and panic will never take hold because the disruptors are things you love. And you're not going to have panic around an experience that you love putting energy into because you're taking the energy of something that you love and the energy of something that has been giving you a panic or anxiety, and you bring them together and it's just going to dilute. So you want to start bringing that together, but you really have to do this exercise. It's not enough just to listen to the training and go, oh yeah, I get the idea. I can just think in the top of my head like, oh, I like to do this or that. It's not going to work that way. You actually have to write it out. There's an energy to writing it out, and there's a memory trigger when you actually have to write something out and read it as opposed to just sort of daydreaming it, okay? Now, the other aspect of this that is super important is that I want you to take your list of disruptors and I want you to make copies of it. You don't have to write out the copies, just make actual copies of it. And so maybe you type it up and then you put it in your computer and make copies that way, or you take it somewhere and you actually just make copies of your own writing, whatever you want to do, make copies. I want you to have a copy in your purse or your wallet. I want you to have a copy at your workplace or your office. I want you to have a copy next to your bed. I want you to have a copy in the bathroom, in the kitchen. I want copies everywhere because I never want you to get to a space, because when you're anxious, your brain function actually goes down. I don't want you to get to a place where you're feeling anxiety and you don't have access to that piece of paper. I want you to have your disruptor paper, because when you start to have anxiety, even just reading through the disruptors themselves will bring you back to a calmer state, okay? Because you're going to be very in the here and now, and that list was made as a prep, as a preventative to having panic. So the very idea that you're reading that list is going to help you to avoid panic. It's just the way it is. So I want you to have that access everywhere. By not doing that, you are automatically self-sabotaging. You're automatically creating anxiety for yourself. So if that's a habit for you, stop it right now. So you need to make copies of that. You need to distribute it throughout your lifestyle, okay? So your car, your home, office, have it in a lot of places, in your gym bag, wherever, have that piece of paper. Be aware of your triggers. You only have to write the triggers down and be aware of them. I don't need you to keep that paper. You can keep everything in one file, because especially if you join our Nest membership, you're going to want to have all of the work that you're doing together in one space so that you can look through and look at your progress. So you can have that, but you don't have to keep that, okay? But I do need you to keep the disruptor sheets, and I need them everywhere, okay? So I am going to be back in our third training. I hope to see you there very soon.